Table Talk is not your typical D&D TTRPG podcast. We are not here to run you through our whole campaign.
We're here to talk about everything else in the space of tabletop roleplay.
I'm your host, Alejandra Wilhelm.
And I'm also your host, Mariah Gresham.
And we're your tabletop roleplay girlies. Alrighty, and we are live with another episode of Table Talk. Thank you so much for joining us again. We have an exciting little guest episode for you today. Give us a little intro and as well as plug away where people can find you.
Yeah, hello. Right. My name is Luke Piofsky. I'm a semi-professional DM and content creator. I hate using that word, but it's the only thing that makes sense. I'm at Arcane Keeper on everything. I'm on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. It's really a way for me to track my own adventures and sort of learning how to be a game master and having excellent opportunities like this one. And just seeing where the hobby I've kind of stumbled face first into leads me. And also I make funny, silly meme videos.
Nice.
As we all tend to do.
As we all tend to do. The videos that I put effort into, the videos that like I sit down and I like plan, flops.
Yeah.
The thing I put together, I'm like, haha, TikTok, funny audio noise, blown out.
Ollie
Doesn't
and
matter.
I have had, we've each had one like shitpost meme on Instagram. Like mine was
The Crunchy Cat.
yours was Crunch Cat.
Was I Crunchy
Sure.
Cat?
You
I
were
thought you were
Crunch Cat, and I was the Hamilton
Oh, yeah.
one, where it was like, make a not emotionally traumatized character. It's like, I wasn't aware that was something a person could do. And that, I was like, that's my magnum opus. And then Crunch Cat.
Crunch Cat just eating some dice really flew off the fucking handle.
We were getting Crunch Cat notifications.
Yeah.
Like a cool.
But all the what we feel is like really funny teasers from our guest episodes is like, cool, there's 200 people here and they seem to enjoy it.
They're getting a little bit. They're getting.
Okay, we're climbing. We're making our way up there.
Wonderful.
Awesome. But thank you so much for joining us. You brought up the point to mention Call of Cthulhu, which is something we're really interested in learning about, and you seem to have a lot of experience with. So give me the lowdown with your experience with Call of Cthulhu and why you love it so much.
My cat is furious at being excluded to the conversation. He loves this room. And
honestly,
when I work
rude
from
of you
home,
not
he normally
include
comes in and just sits with me, but he's furious.
Pretty
One of
sure
our
when I
cats,
sent
I
the
should
invite,
say.
it was like, must be included as guests.
Yeah, exactly. So Call of Cthulhu, my journey with Call of Cthulhu started. I've been into tabletop RPGs for a long time, and like a lot of people, my first tabletop RPG was Dungeons and Dragons, specifically Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. And you cut forward years later, I'd played D&D. I'd never run any game. I was getting very much into sort of horror as a genre. I was getting very much into like the works of H.P. Lovecraft, because I think as a horror author, I think his work is genuinely incredible. I think his imagination is incredible. And I eventually stumbled on, there's a Call of Cthulhu tabletop RPG, and it's very popular. It is, I think, the most popular tabletop RPG in Korea. It's massively popular in Korea as opposed to the rest of the world. And I'll get a little bit more into why that is, because I think it's interesting. And so when I was looking at the game, I was like, well, I have no idea what to expect from it. Let me see if there's an actual play. I found an actual play. It was bad. I'm not going to name names because I'm not interested in slanging anyone off, but it was just a group of guys who really weren't funny, who really thought they were funny. And this is a pet peeve of mine. Not everything needs to be comedy. Not everything needs to be funny. And then I found a much better actual play called The Eldritch Hour, who I will happily shout out because I think it's fantastic. And the guy who makes it doesn't get enough recognition. He puts so much effort into it. He does the music, he runs the game, whole shebang. And that was brilliant. And just listening to that being played, because he sort of speaks over the rules kind of just in the background, I'm just thinking, this sounds really very straightforward. And it was also a really early example of, this isn't a game that I want to play. This is a game that I want to run. This is a game that I want to use to tell a story. And I'd only had that before with the Dresden Files RPG, because I'm a huge fan of the Dresden Files book. But that system is a nightmare. It's a giant headache. It's too complicated. It's called the Fate system, and it's just, I will eventually try and look at it again. My New Year's resolution for this year is not buy any new RPGs, because I put too
And
many.
actually play the other ones that you've bought.
Yeah, and just sort of learn how they work, learn how chases work in Call of Cthulhu as a goal for this year. And Chaosium as a company have a really, really excellent starter set for Cthulhu, and it comes with dice, character sheets, a stripped down version of the rules, and some scenarios to play through. And before you even get that, they actually have a free adventure just online, which you can just play, and that comes with even more basic rules. And so there's a nice progression there, which is something I don't know if D&D has in quite the same way. There's almost too much of it. So I got the starter set. I pretty rapidly found people who wanted to play it. And then I found as I'm playing it, I'm like, oh, this game is easy to teach. Its themes are reflected really well in the gameplay. And it's just spun from there. It's become, I've taught D&D to people who are absolute beginners. And the difference between teaching Call of Cthulhu to someone who's never played an RPG before and teaching D&D, it's black and white. D&D is a nightmare to teach to people who have no RPG experience. Let's talk a little bit more about the game in itself.
A lot of mechanics.
It is. It's complicated. You've got modifiers and everything. Call of Cthulhu is quite simply, if you roll under the number, you've succeeded. And that's kind of all you need to know to get started. So to talk about the game in itself, Call of Cthulhu is primarily a survival horror RPG, heavily inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft and by later Lovecraftian cosmic horror authors. It's a game for telling these kinds of stories. To give you an idea, and people talk about, the meme is that Call of Cthulhu characters die all the time. And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is because your average Cthulhu investigator will have 11 hit points, and a gun in Cthulhu does 1d10 damage and can fire 3 times in a round.
I mean, that feels accurate, though.
It is accurate. It is accurate. That's the thing.
To die.
Shoot a gun well enough, it's a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the thing. Combat in Call of Cthulhu, like Silent Hill and like the early Resident Evil games, is janky and is dangerous. And it reflects combat in real life in that it happens suddenly and it's deadly. The other thing the combat does that's fun is people aren't just stood there hitting and then waiting for their turn to hit someone. When someone attacks you, they can react. They can react by hitting you back. So it has that clash of, so you can run in and try to hit someone and they can just sock you in the jaw and you're out. It uses a system called the basic role-playing system, which is a D100 system. All of your skills have a number assigned to them. You roll under that number. So let's say you have the most important skill in Call of Cthulhu are spot hidden and library use. If you don't have like spot hidden and library use, just rake a new character.
Damn.
If you roll, if you have 70 in library use and you roll under 70, you've succeeded. That is as complicated as it gets. The real fun, and what I was saying earlier, one of the reasons Call of Cthulhu is so popular in Japan and Korea is because it's such an easy system, people take the system and use it to do high school romance or anime, and they use it so you search Call of Cthulhu on Instagram, you get lots of real pretty boy anime OCs, and I'm like, I don't think these are investigating cosmic horrors.
I opened the tab.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And it's really interesting. The real meat of the game comes when you start to talk about sanity. In H.P. Lovecraft stories, madness and insanity are huge themes. You're being confronted by things that are beyond the human scope of understanding, or by things that by their very existence challenge the reality we are in. The way that is reflected in the game is you have a sanity stat, a bit like HP, and you can lose it as you go on. The fun kicks in when you lose 5 or more sanity points in one turn, because then you have to roll intelligence. And this is a roll that you want to fail. Because let's say you've just watched A Hound of Tyndalos pull itself out of the corner of a room as if from nowhere. It's traveled millions of years and it's tracked you down to this corner. You have to roll intelligence. If you succeed, you are unable to deny the implication of what it is you've seen. If you fail, you could just go, man, that dog is real sick. And you can just shove it into a little box in your brain and you're fine.
Yeah.
Like,
What
this
a
is in
weird
fact a
Um,
game where you benefit from being a himbo.
Yeah. You benefit from being blind, deaf, and dumb and stupid. It's the only game where not doing anything really is your best option because it's a horror game, and that's the point. You are meant to be.
I would love to play like a little old grandma that it's that same vein of like old people just denying what is like right in front of them and is true.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not how I did it back in my day.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I've seen this before. And it's a
It's
star
just a
spawn.
really big dog.
Yeah,
Weird
exactly.
costumes these days.
So you succeed your intelligence roll, then you have something called a bout of madness. And this can take multiple forms. You could develop like a new phobia. One of my investigators once developed an obsession for throwing themselves off of tall buildings. You could develop you can trigger bouts of rage, you can pass out. If you're on your own, so let's say you've stayed up all night reading through the Necronomicon, that has its own bouts of madness. You could wake up 8 hours later and you've been mugged, or you just can't remember what's happened. And it gets worse because with bouts of madness, the keeper of arcane lore, who's the games master for Cthulhu, can take your character sheet and can go, "Oh, sorry, you have a sister back home who you love? Not anymore. You don't remember them."
She actually was never real. So
Yeah, you can just scratch that off.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and whenever someone loses any sanity, the keeper gets to decide an involuntary action. So you could just be like, you just pass out. Or, hey, you know that gun you were holding before you came into the room? You've fired that now. It's great.
Just
and
weird.
it's a really good example of the game's mechanics backing up its themes. Because as you lose sanity, it becomes easier to lose more.
Yeah.
And as you develop, like Cthulhu mythos is a skill in the game. You cannot develop it normally. The only way you can develop it is being exposed to the mythos. But as you are exposed to the mythos, your maximum sanity is decreased. So the more you see, the more you experience, the more sanity you lose. It is inherently a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And
like
compare and contrast that. Yeah, what was that? Sorry?
Just everyone's cuckoo that knows crazy.
Yeah,
that knows
exactly.
anything about. They're up in a tower being like, "Let me tell you."
Exactly. The best way to sell it though is compare and contrast it to D&D. Dungeons and Dragons is a great system if you want to play a fantasy superhero. If that's what you want to do, that's wonderful, and it's perfect for it. It doesn't work for horror. People need to stop trying to make D&D work for horror. D&D is a game where the numbers will always get bigger. You'll always have more health, unless you just start to break the game over your back. And at that point, play a new game.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this to be rude or elitist. I'm saying it to save people time.
Fair.
Yeah, because at some point with D&D, you start becoming like legendary god tier level shit, and it becomes harder to have stakes there.
Yep.
Yes.
And make you feel the urgency in that.
Exactly. In the Dungeons Master's Guide, it sort of says level 1 to 5, your local heroes. Level 5 to 10, your sort of heroes of the world. 10 to 15, your champions of the world. 15 to 20, your champions of the multiverse. And that's the scale you're working on. Whereas in Cthulhu, you're an accountant called Tim with a house in the Poconos and a snub-nosed pistol, and you've got 7 deep ones running at you across the beach. Very different. Very different.
I love that. It definitely feels like I think me and Mariah can both attest, like the moments that we've played, and we've only really had experience playing horror in either like VTM or applying it to D&D, but we're not like at some god tier level where the stakes are not there. But that feeling of tension and risk and like knowing that the next hit could be the one that does you in, like that's the good shit. Like I love to live in that zone.
That's one of the things I really like about BTM is that like the social combat is so much of it, and like if we're doing it right, I mean, it depends a bit on the campaign. Like we're a Camarilla campaign, and like it's very heavily modified Fall of One. So like if things are going well, there shouldn't be combat unless you're being sent out on like a mission or whatever. Like if we have to start rolling dice to use our abilities and like punch each other in Elysium, it's gonna end poorly. Like you're gonna need to make new characters.
Yeah.
I can't save you. And that risk is fun. And like the stuff I've cooked up with each of them on the back end where I'm like, I love this. And I'll try to let it play out. And if it goes tits up, your character will be sentenced to the final death. And I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Is really fun to like have that on the table.
Yeah. VTM's like that. VTM is like that in that you can have entire sessions where no one touches the dice because it is so character driven. And I've been running VTM for my partner and a couple of our friends for a while now. And it is the most challenging game I found as a games master. It's I found it so challenging to write and to prep because the focus on VTM is the characters. The rules in VTM, like I have the core book. So much of that book is lore and it's flavor text and like the actual rules section very slim, and there's a bunch of optional rules at the end if you want to do specific stuff, but the actual rules section is very slim because it's not about that. It's about the characters and the generation. And in our game's become very horny recently. We got the Bloodstained Love core book, which has been very popular, and it's challenging. I love VTM. I think it does what it does really well. I don't think, unlike Call of Cthulhu, I don't think D&D, I don't think you could ever modify it to be something else. I think it's only ever going to be a vampire game.
Yeah. It's, I mean, like, I haven't played a lot with, I got one of, like, the big bundles from, like, Renegade Studios, I think. And, like, the werewolf game, I believe, was on there. And there's also, like, a Hunter Reckoning game. And so I'm interested to see, I want to, like, look through those and see what is different about it mechanics-wise. But yeah, definitely with vampires, like, it is intrinsically what it is. And, like, it is almost more, like, for me, plotting how a novel might go with, like, the element of uncertainty than actually focusing on mechanics. It's more like, okay, what story beats are here? Who's doing what when? What is in play? What are the power players? What are their goals and everything? And then how are y'all going to run up against that? And how, trying to be 10 steps ahead a little bit of how things might play out. And also kind of knowing I'm never going to be because some weird shit will happen regardless, which is the fun of it. But yeah, like you can truly, in the sessions I've run, you can roll with like, you have your ability scores of like how many dice you have in your pool. You can set arbitrary difficulties in your head, which is what I've done. I'm like, roll me this skill and this attribute, and you can just do that. That can be the whole mechanic. Like that's what I've written on. Because we're new to it, and I'm like, I don't want to make it more complicated for myself. So I'm like, and I like I don't have copies of y'all's character sheet currently, which is a me problem that I should have that. I just don't. So I'm like, cool, we're just going for it.
Yes, so much of the rules in that, there are so many parts where just go, oh, you could just ignore this, because who cares? It's your game. Like, you could just ignore this stuff. You don't have to do any of this. It's very,
which I like.
Very loosey-goosey. It works, but can be challenging. And I think VTM really puts a lot on the storyteller to build an environment that players can interact with and to trust your players to tell the story themselves. You couldn't run a dungeon with VTM. Yeah. You could for Call of Cthulhu.
I think that's the big difference in the challenge of like the different styles of DMing or GMing in general is like, when you're prepping a dungeon, it's systematic, it's numbers, it's planning a map out. Like there is an easy path to follow with that, and you just set the stage and you know exactly what's going on at these different places, and you've set, my secrets are here. If they give perception checks here, whatever, you've got it all planned out in that way. When it's a more narrative heavy style game, which like we played D&D for the home game that I DM. I have not ran VTM, but because it is more story based and our game is so heavily character driven and story and role play, I hardly ever touch combat. It's very much that when I do plan or when I do prep, it is challenging and hard because you have to plan for both all the possible circumstances that could happen and even the ones that you can't possibly imagine. Yeah. So you can do as much prep as you want, but then you finally sit at that table and the moment your players start talking, you're like, half of this has gone out the window. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's the challenge of planning as much as you think you can and being okay to let go when it doesn't go that way and having to improv on the spot.
Yeah.
No, sorry. It's been so interesting because I've run too many games, and it's interesting to talk about the different ways you prep for different games. Because for D&D, it's a case of, for me, the way I've always done it is I have a beginning hook, I have the ending of where I'd like people to be, and I have some ideas for what people are going to run into in the middle, and that's kind of as far as I go. I don't like to over prep because I get in my own head about it. With Cthulhu, it's a mystery. These are primarily mystery stories. So the way I like to do Cthulhu is, in all of the Cthulhu scenarios, they have a breakdown and they'll say, this is for the keeper. Here is what happened. And a lot of that information your players will never discover because it's almost impossible for them to do so. But it's for you. And so a great way to prep for Cthulhu, or any mystery story really, is right, here's what's happened. What question are the players trying to answer? What are the clues? And then what are the dangers? What's trying to stop them doing so? And then you can kind of just leave it. I've currently got my Cthulhu group in the middle of Innsmouth. And I've just dropped stuff and just let them kind of run with it. And the handy thing of having a big list of clues, like you might have a faded eldritch text or a journal filled with mad ramblings or a spent revolver, you can just drop them wherever your players go. If it makes some kind of logical sense, you can just blip. With VTM, prepping VTM, I found it so much more that toolbox approach. It's so much more about thinking, okay, who are these players? What do they care about? What are their convictions? Who are their touchstones? Then you got to think, well, who else is working? And how might they interfere? And so you've got this whole city to work with, and it's just a case of keeping a list almost of like, right, well, what does the prince want? What's the primogen up to? And it just means you've got a lot of things you can kind of pull from and go, okay, well, now this is a problem. As a storyteller in VTM, I find it's less about structuring the narrative and more about introducing conflicts. And you could argue that's what all storytelling is, because all storytelling is just conflict. But I think it is less about having that guiding them with D&D.
Yeah, I agree in the sense of like knowing where and finding where each of like my players, their characters' interests intersect and their motivations intersect. And it's like at the end of the last session we had played, I had like the current Prince of London and send them on like a quest to retrieve something. And then I left that session, I'm like, what the retrieve? Because I sent them on a mission and I'm like, I don't know what it is. And so like I was just racking my brain for like what would be a good thing to start pulling in their different backstories and the tension and like the different motivations and different reasons why they would be interested. And I finally came on something where I'm like, okay, this is it. This is what they're going to get. And then it's enough of a hook that I'm like, I don't know exactly how they're going to react to it, but it will motivate them in some way. And I'm like, okay, that we can go for. And so it's been weird because it is almost like it's a loose amount of planning, but there's a lot of absence of planning there as well. And just trying to, focus on the bigger, like 10,000 foot view. Like it's like a chessboard, but also not, because there's a degree of like calculating with that you can't really do with characters and with people. But yeah, it's just trying to keep throwing them into that conflict and see where they go. 'Cause, like, I have my ideas about where I think they're gonna side and like I think their alliances will lay and all that, but like you never know.
Yeah. I think the biggest emphasis should be like on the DM is like you should know your world, you should know the other characters outside of the players and what their motivations are, what's going on, and focus on that top-down view so that when ship goes sideways or they're going down a path you didn't think they would, you have an understanding of what are the consequences, what are they going to run into, so that you can adapt more on the fly. Because if you know what's going on in your world outside of your core players, then you know how things shift. And that is like, I think the best advice I could give to someone that is DMing is like, one, let go of control, let your players guide the story.
For sure.
You focus on the world and and all those other elements and what's going on there. So that way when things pivot, you know exactly what is gonna go
what
on.
Chain of events that kicked off, or like what, and then that's also the things of like if they've started something that's like, oh no, this is an unpaved path to hell, and we're all gonna die if you do this. Then at that point you can have like an NPC or someone step in,
be like, hey bud,
basically be like, hey, are we sure this is what we want to do? And just give a little good faith warning in character, so you don't have to stop the whole game and be like, hey, you bunch of fuckers. You're about to all die. Please stop.
You're entering the area where like you no longer see health points, you just see skulls.
You're in that where it's like you cannot open the map, there are enemies there. It's like that's where we're
this
going.
has come up and you've stepped in, it just goes, you are not high enough level for this area, turn around.
Please turn around.
I do genuinely think that's such good advice though, because I think this is the easiest way to elevate your NPCs in any game. And that's to ensure that they have motivations outside of existing for the party to talk to. They should have their own
standing in the corner.
Yeah, exactly. They should not be idle shopkeepers, be like, hello, adventurer. They can be if that's the kind of vibe you want. But if you're interested in elevating your NPCs, they need to have lives outside of, like, if the adventurers fuck off for like a year to go just dick around in the desert or something, then come back, they should be like, yeah, no, it all went horribly wrong because you guys left. Like, the world keeps moving.
Yes.
Exactly. It doesn't pause. I think, and inevitably we're going to talk about Baldur's Gate. Inevitably.
Obviously.
I think I think so. I think that's one of the reasons why the Baldur's Gate companions are so popular, because they have motivations outside of, I'm in an adventuring party. They have something that they want. They all have this higher goal.
Yeah. And and like when your personal motivations go adverse to theirs, like they'll be like, I'll fucking leave. Like if we're not going to do this, I will leave and go do it on my own because this is so important to me. And you have to contend with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really enjoying I've been really enjoying writing for D&D, for the sort of actual play, which I suppose now I'm announcing. It's nowhere near finished, so no one start buying t-shirts. It's nowhere near finished. Yeah, tickets for the live show up next week. And it's been good fun because I've loved the story, and I think it's been so nice to been a real privilege to have players around my table who I've given the pitch to, and I've sort of said, because I've never done it before. I've never sort of run a game and I've gone, hey, it's quite a strict vibe I'm going for. And I think it's a good one, and I'd like to see. I've never done that. I've always kind of been a bit, it's heroic fantasy, or it's a vampire game, and let people kind of just have fun with it. Because if it's a home game and it's just you and your mates, who cares? If everyone's having a fun time, who cares? But this one, I did have a much more kind of limited kind of a focus of what I wanted them to do. And I'll talk about it a little bit, just because I think it's interesting. The pitch is that all of the characters knew each other as children. But then as they became young adults, there was a civil war that pulled them all away from each other. Now, after the war and after a couple of years, they've come back. And so their backstory isn't, where did you grow up? What were your parents like? 'Cause we know that bit. The backstory is, what happened to you during this conflict?
Right.
How did you cut your teeth? And it was such a privilege to have a group of players around the table, because I didn't didn't like sit down with them and really grill them. I just sort of said, this is what I want to do. And that first episode, we wrapped, and I just thought that went better than I possibly could have imagined. Everyone got what we were running for. And as a DM, those are the moments where stuff clicks. And that's the moment where you're like, I do love this. Just when people get it and everyone kind of sinks into it.
Once you find your people, it's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I have an opportunity to play soon. I'm very excited about.
In your own actual play or like a different thing?
Oh, I'm going to be a player just for fun.
Okay.
I'm ecstatic.
Love that for you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We're playing Cyberpunk Red, which is great. I've been playing Cyberpunk 2077. That game rocks. And my friend Kat's very into the genre, so she's going to be running it. She's doing and it's just, I think it's important for DMs to get a chance to play, because you do. Yeah. It's a bit of a reset, and I think Baldur's Gate's been great to that, because it's like, oh man, I get to have a D&D character again. It's been literally years.
I love that. Yeah, I'm thankful that whenever I took up the mantle, because we were in a situation of we're all players and we just got rid of our previous DM, and none of us have ever done it before. I'm grateful that I still have opportunities to play even while I do DM for us. And then all of my players have started to take up the mantle. Mariah took up VTM. Alyssa's running one shots for us now. And then Bex is waiting on a Monster Hunter Kickstarter that she backed, and she's gonna run this cool monster hunting campaign
series, one shot, two shot kind of thing.
But it's gonna be the same character, and where each one shot is us going on a new hunt.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. That makes sense for the Monster Hunter structure.
Basically,
yeah. And then on top of that, we have it was funny because we talk about him all the time on the show. Teddy, shout out Teddy. I matched with him on Hinge, and we just started talking about D&D, and our first conversation was him pitching a campaign to me that he had always wanted to run but didn't have players.
Yeah.
And he sent me a voice memo of his trailer for it. And he's got an excellent voice, and he did it's a horror Western situation. And he gave me the cinema trailer audio for it. And I was at Sherwood with the girls, and I was I matched with this guy. He gave me this intro for his campaign, listen to it and stuff because it's so good. And they all just looked at me and were so we're playing. Right? He needs players, and we are players, so we're playing.
We're going to play it on the Sundays for the weekend we come down from Strixhaven. Yeah. Yeah. That's what we're going to do.
Excellent.
Yeah. Because we're split between Houston and Austin. So they come down once a month for my game. And I was
fantastic. That's really cool.
Yeah. We can do it on Sunday, mornings, and they leave around 3 or 4 or something. Mm-hmm. And so I pitched it to him. I was I know you said you've been trying to get players for a few months, years. I don't even know. I got you players within a weekend, and I need you to be prepared for next week. And he's what?
They had come up, Ollie and Alyssa had come up to go to Sherwood with Bex and I, because Sherwood's closer up here to Austin. And then the next weekend, Bex and I were coming down to Houston to play Strixhaven. So it was Ollie's here's me and 3 chaos bitches. Please prep all of your shit that you need to kick this off in a week.
Yeah. Congratulations. And he was what the fuck? And then it was funny because the one person he had that agreed to play was another girl he matched with that just it didn't work out, but they stayed friends, Chrissy. And then whenever we all joined the little server, she's wait, is this a party of all women? And I was yes, it is, bitch.
Wonderful.
And she's this is incredible.
Yep.
And Teddy, we've just made Teddy's world a living nightmare since.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, not to sound like a stuck record, but Call of Cthulhu has a horror Western setting.
Yes.
Ooh.
It's called Down Darker Trails. For Cthulhu, there is the classic setting is 1920s. You've also got 1930s Berlin, French Revolution, Stone Age is an option. There's prehistoric Cthulhu you can do.
Love
that. There's Roman legions you could do. Medieval, Dark Ages is one you can do. Pirates, Corsairs of Cthulhu is another one. And there's Cthulhu Modern as well, but it's such a place for. I actually met my partner on Hinge as well, and one of the reasons we matched was because there's a photo of me DMing, and that worked quite well. And shortly after, I was just chatting to her, and I just sort of said, yeah, I'm setting up a new game. It's called Broken Compass. It's very sort of Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider-esque. And she just goes, oh, I'd be interested in playing that. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess you're playing. And now now we live together and we have a dog.
That's so cute. I love that. I implement the same strategy because I'm like, hey, I run a D&D podcast. I am a dungeon master. You've been warned. And then one of my pictures is like my table all set up because I'm an aesthetics asshole and I like to decorate our table depending on the vibes and stuff. I think I have the picture from like your arc finale. And I had basically like those little fairy lights that have leaves like all over the perimeter of the table with like flowers blooming and all that stuff. Cause it was very like evil druid shit was going on.
Sure.
Evil druid body horror shit.
Very cool.
But it does look like a very beautiful table. It ended up being really horrific later that night.
Yeah, it could have been for a wedding.
We
it
actually
just definitely wasn't.
I have a magpie brain with DMing. So the reason I jump between games is just because like I'll love it and then I'll go, I'd like a break, I want to do something different. Just because I start to run out of ideas. It's like, so we've been running Broken Compass with a group of friends. Brief introduction. Broken Compass is a very, very simple tabletop RPG, primarily used to tell stories like Tomb Raider, Uncharted, Indiana Jones, Globetrotting Adventures, Temples, blah, blah, blah. You get the vibe. It's a lot of fun. It's been the most confidence boosting because I found it so easy to write an original story because I love that genre. Very, very sweet on that genre. But we actually wrapped Broken Compass recently. We did 3 like seasons. So we did like 3 little campaigns.
Love that.
Nice.
And we were just reflecting at the end of it because we were just sat together. We were like, I can't believe Compass is done. And I was like, yeah, we had just started dating when we started Compass. And now we live together and we got to wrap up these character stories. And it's lovely stuff, isn't it? Have you guys heard of Kinks and Cantrips?
I just got my copy of it.
It was in this chair when I moved the chair and I was like, hey, Mariah.
I was like, I'm gonna have to hide that.
I've got it. I backed it. I'm just waiting for an excuse to run it at this point. I'm gonna wait till we take a break. I'm gonna do VTM for a bit longer. And they're going to go, hey, guys, let's just go all out. Let's just get weird with it. All right?
Yeah. They've gotten you primed and ready with the whole, like, hey, we're going to incrementally get hornier in our campaign.
And then we'll just go for it.
Like, I don't know how graphic I'm allowed to go. But one of our vampires was running with a group of gangrels. And towards the end of the night, he basically just tackled him on the middle of the road. I was like, is this what you want? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, we're going to cut to black there. And we're going to move on.
Sure would be a shame.
It was. And then we get to this week and we start up and she goes, I'd just like to check myself for any superficial damage.
Yes.
Like take 2 superficial damage. And gain a will.
Yeah, he goes
on with your day.
Goes to the prince's office and just goes like, do you want to sit down? He goes, I'm okay to stand, actually.
I'm good right where I'm at, actually. Thank you.
Right, so we're gonna have a go.
I love that.
It is good.
Yeah, we just had a situation because we like ours is Strixhaven, but it's like, you know, college age, whatever, all that shenanigans. And we're currently in a ball arc and we have lots of angst going on because the guy who's getting engaged at the end of the ball is her character's ex. And then he was like forced to break up with her because his family was like, hey, motherfucker. No.
In like a really cruel way. It was he's like, oh, I never wanted you. You never meant anything. And then like all of her traumatic shit happened in the interim time.
Yeah. So like his mom was like, either you break up with her or I end it for you. And he's like, cool, I gotta go break this woman's heart.
Yeah.
In the worst way possible. And now he's getting engaged and he's the brother of the other, like one of the other players.
And he's just very much a simp. We thought he was gonna be like,
I rolled like dog shit for this man anytime this bitch is around. Like I've tried, my purest of intentions was to make him a fuckboy.
Yeah.
and like unlikable and toxic and whatever.
It was gonna be like
And
an
then
enemy
anytime this
season,
bitch was
maybe.
around, and he's like, that's several nat ones in a row. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
Like,
This man is
It's
just
hilarious.
stumbling through life.
he's a fuckboy for anybody else, and then she enters the room. He's like, I can't formulate words. I
Yep.
don't know.
And he
It's very
goes,
cute,
hey,
but-
what's up, babe? And then he kicks his skateboard, and the skateboard clips him directly in the chin
And
Yeah.
100%
and
of the
severs
time.
his tongue.
Yeah, that's the gist of it for
Yes.
sure.
And so they had a cute moment of like, he was just in the hedge maze after like the first opening ceremonies happened and everybody's like already back in bed. And he's just like drinking himself into a stupor because he knows he's about to get like unwillingly engaged tomorrow. And there's like a lot of pressure in that. And then she kind of stumbles in and they have like a really sweet reconnection moment where he's like kind of in that mode of like, fuck it, I'm getting married tomorrow. I might as well like come clean about this to her. And he just kept rolling like dog shit anytime she like asked him a question. I was like, is he gonna say the truth or is he gonna just say face? I'm like, no, this man's dumb. And so they end up like hooking up in the hedge maze and stuff.
And we get caught by his sister and our other party member.
because she could hear it going on.
She could hear his dumbass because again he rolled like dog shit for the like stealth roll to not be overheard in the hedge maze. My character rolled fine. And then so yeah, we just had her canonically flip him over and be like, you're not gonna be in control if you can't keep your shit together. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But
And
too
then
late.
Poor Callista's like, my brother is fucking somebody. And
Yeah.
it's the night of his engagement. If somebody catches him, like all our plans are ruined. She's trying to help this man to like either get out of it or something. And so she goes over there.
Their first failure was building a hedge maze. Hedge mazes are exclusively for romantic trysts or being morose in.
Well,
that's what they're for.
Like, you got to.
That's
Because,
all
like,
she's
that half the joy is people getting caught doing things they shouldn't so that the whole ball has things to talk about.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah. And it was just fucking funny because they, like, get over there, they catch them, and they're having to be quiet but argue at the same time and sneak back over to somebody's room. And they're it's just them pointing guns at each other, and we had the most genuine moment of like, I'm arguing with the sister and she's arguing with the other player, and it keeps alternating who's arguing with who, and then me and our friend Alyssa, who plays like the other like male character in that party, and they're both canonically fuckboys. So as these two were arguing, being like, you fucked my brother, whatever, we just had the most genuine moment of like, okay, be fucking for real. We're just embodying these two fuckboys like knuckle tapping each other. And me and Alyssa had a moment of like, we just embodied the men we hate in the most genuine way possible, and we need to have a moment with that.
It was really
But that's catharsis. That's
it's
catharsis.
So good. It was so good. And it was fucking funny.
If you saw me flinch, it's because your audio just got considerably louder in my ears just suddenly.
I'm so sorry. It's because I'm a loud
it's
bitch.
Fine. It's fine. I can it's generally. I just think I think a wire's clicked in or something. This laptop's very old. Am I right to ask you guys a couple of questions, or is that
if you
want? So the one I like that I think is interesting is, do you have a dream tabletop RPG? So you have an unlimited budget and you can say, I want to adapt X into a tabletop RPG.
Oh,
I mean, we kind of have our actual play. I will say it's not exactly the right answer, but it's the only answer I can really give. We record our Strixhaven session, and my dream would be to adapt that into an animated series. So to like take that, like I'm an author, I'm a writer, so like go and just write that out as a script and go and voice act it, and like we have people like similar to like the Legends of Vox Machina kind of thing. That would be my dreams. It's such a good story, and I would love to do something with it. I feel like if we can't end up doing that, we'll do it as like a narrative podcast at some point. But yeah, like we want to keep that as our home game for us, but I'd love to take that story and do something with it. Like a higher production value down the road.
There's a there actually is a thing like that in Japan. In Japan, they have, I cannot for the life of me remember what it is, but there have been long running like manga series and anime series, which are adaptations of people's home Dungeons and Dragons games. They get published in like magazines, like 4 panel by 4 panel. They have their own name. I can't remember what they're called, but that's another thing that people do.
That is cool. To make sure I'm understanding your question, are you asking me if there's like some show or movie or something that I'm like, I would love to take that and make it full production as like a TTRPG actual play situation, or
just a game, or just a
just a
tabletop
game in general?
RPG? Yeah. I feel like Avatar was on a lot of people's lists, and now that's real.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm trying to think.
Mass Effect.
Mass Effect be good.
For you, for
Mass
Ale,
Effect
yeah.
would be good. There is like I have a deep love of Dragon Age, as I've like shouted from the rooftops for my whole life. It's quite bad. But there, like, I recently got my hands on like the TTRPG rule book for the Dragon Age game. And like, which was so much harder to get than I thought it was going to, because I didn't realize there had been limited prints and whatever and all that stuff. And so like it was a whole journey to even get it. Bex had like mentioned she saw it one time at a game store, but I literally went to every game store in Houston and could not find it one day. And I was like, what the fuck? And so one day while I was helping her move, she literally just out of the corner of her eye was like, that was the store. And I broke every traffic law to whip that shit around. And we walked in there and there was literally just one in there.
Damn.
And it was like, it was market, it was like the normal standard price it should be for the rule book, and not the fucking $300 it is to get it on fucking wherever else. So I'll be like, yeah, no, yoink. And I've read through it and stuff, but like, I love the lore of Dragon Age, and that has like impacted so much of my love for fantasy. And I love what they did with like the Elven pantheon and all of those things. And so like, I would love to do like a Dragon Age actual play, but play through essentially like the fall of the elves and what that was, and like when the veil goes up and how that split everything.
Very cool. Excellent.
That'd be sick. I would love to do that.
My personal dream one that will never happen is that there's two, my favorite fantasy series of all time no one has read, and it's called The Codex Alera by Jim Butcher.
I read that. It's good.
Oh my god. Stop the podcast. I need to talk to you about it for the next 6 hours. I have no one to speak to.
DM me. We can talk about it. We mentioned Dresden Files. I was like, I wonder if he's read Codex Alera, because I've not read the Dresden Files, but I have read Codex Alera.
I've read all of the Dresden Files.
I'll DM you.
There's a lot of those books. I think Codex Alera it has a very sort of strict magic system. I feel like it's very doable. The other one for me is by the way, if you're listening to this, go and read Codex Alera.
I would recommend it. Yeah.
Those books quite legitimately changed the course of my life. Those were the books that I needed at the time I needed them. Is the best way I could describe my relationship with Codex Alera, without getting real personal with it. The other one for me would be for the video game series Titanfall. Because I adore Titanfall. And like, there is that mech game, which name is completely gone. Lancer. There we go. There is Lancer. But if Titanfall had a dedicated tabletop RPG, if they announced a Kickstarter tomorrow, I would remortgage my house. And I would, I wouldn't be able to find anyone to play it with me. I would. I'd gamble it all on the Titanfall.
Put it all on the line.
RPG. I'm not getting a third game, so I've got to take what I can get.
That's beautiful. I love that.
I have also thought, just like, especially as I was reading Codex Alera, that I was like, because it is, for everyone that hasn't read it, it's a bit of a blend of kind of Avatar and Pokemon.
Yep.
Is a good way that I can describe it, with like a lot of like a very elemental heavy spirits that work with people, and people have different like affinities for different areas and all that. And like, as I was reading it, I was like, this would very easily slot into like a TTRPG.
Yeah. And it's just Rome. The setting is just Rome.
Effectively,
so you don't need to invent a new system. It's just Rome. And it's
renamed Rome. Yeah.
It is. But yeah, it's beautiful. I think both of those would work really well as their own games. But as I said, this year I bought too many RPGs last year. I bought too many, and I've not run half of them. So I'm not buying any more this year. I've got on my shelf Stokerverse, which is like gothic horror. It partly written by like the descendants of Bram Stoker and things like that. And I've got
Mariah, don't open a browser. Mariah.
You could just play Cthulhu by Gaslight. That's my advice. It's good. Like, the art's stunning. The art's fucking fantastic. I'd buy it for the art. I also bought it because I'm a slut for Sherlock Holmes.
Love.
I'm a slut for gothic romance. So.
Yeah. At my right, you can't see it, but I actually have a bookcase entirely filled with Sherlock Holmes novels.
Incredible.
I love that.
Yeah, like Bloodborne is visually one of my favorite games. I am awful at it. I'm so bad at it. But visually, it's one of my favorite games.
I have such a weird relationship with Bloodborne because I've seen people play it and I've watched so many playthroughs and I'm like, this seems really fun. I've tried to play it like 3 times and I'm like, I am bored and lost. And I don't know.
Hard.
It's fucking hard shit.
They're also, I just like I'm feral for the way FromSoft designs their levels. Their level design is just so ingenious. And I just adore it. It's something with like Elden Ring. Like I adore Elden Ring. I'm very bad at it. Like, and so when you get into things like the castles and stuff, where it's like you're not just frolicking through the fields and going wherever you please, and you kind of have to do this section to progress, then I'm like, I'm not good enough at this game for this.
I think everybody knows that though. I don't think that counts anymore. The grass is green, sky is blue. From software games have good environmental design. Like it doesn't count anymore. You just give
These
it
are
to
the
them.
solemn truths of the universe. Yes.
Yeah, like BioWare games have good writing. They just do. They don't get points for it anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh no, I've been over here gnawing at the bars of my enclosure for Dreadwolf to come out in Dragon Age 4.
Yeah.
They keep teasing.
I will cease to exist for literally anybody.
Yeah.
Dreadwolf will be for you when Vox Machina, The Legends of Vox Machina came out, what that was for me.
Yeah.
I was like, this will be my whole personality. I apologize in advance to the person I'm about to become.
No, y'all have not. You have not known me long enough because, again, like Dragon Age is one of those that like we're gonna come out with a new game every fucking 10 years or some bullshit. So you have not seen me because you did not know me when Inquisition came out,
right? Yeah.
Like you have not seen who I am.
We haven't seen you.
You haven't seen your true form. That's been my girlfriend with Has Been Hotel.
I just binge watched Has Been Hotel while Ollie was driving up yesterday. And I'm the way I'm about to deep.
It's so good
into
it's
like
real
Alistair lore cannot be. Like we started watching Hell of a Boss too,
just to get more lore.
I'm gonna watch the drawing streams that like the creators of I require more content. Thank you.
Yeah, but no, we've been really enjoying it. But then she's got really into it. And I've just said, has this made you more sympathetic of why I talk about Sherlock Holmes so much? And she's like, yes, I get it now. I understand.
I get it. I get it now. No, yeah.
What is your favorite Sherlock Holmes adaptation?
Yeah.
Oh, the Granada series with Jeremy Brett. It's not been fast answer because I think about it all the time.
Listen, you have to see that thing on you.
It's not been topped. Jeremy Brett is the best. Sorry, I can hear my cat screaming outside.
Oh, you're good. If you want to let them in, that's okay.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me get Pickle.
Pickle.
Oh, yeah. Pickle.
Everyone hold for Pickle.
Boy. Hold on. He's only got one eye.
Stop. Oh my goodness.
Pickle is a void.
Pickle is a void cat.
One-eyed void. It makes so much sense.
I missed you too, buddy. Jeremy Brett is the best actor to have played Sherlock Holmes, and I'll die on that hill.
Okay.
That's my favorite adaptation. My favorite story is more up for debate because I've read all the canon, but I have The Wall next to me. I recommend The Vanishing Man by Philip Purser Hallard, and I recommend The Unquiet Spirits by Bonnie McBird, which made me cry. Yeah.
I've not read the Sherlock Holmes books. I need to at some point.
They're good. They're short.
I read a few.
You could read them before bed.
Whenever I need to just like really beef up my like Goodreads yearly total, I just need to. That's what I'm going to do with Percy Jackson, I think, because I need to go back and like read through all the Percy Jackson canon. It's like I'm just going to rack up those Goodreads points.
That's also been really nice to see that like be redone.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And like redone well.
It's been very,
Mhm.
very nostalgic. I've been watching it with my mom, and I'm like, she'll ask me questions. I'm like, I read this when I was little. I like it. I'm having a good time.
I've not watched it yet because I want to read the books 1st
Mm-hmm.
to like refresh. Because I don't think I ever read all of them for some reason. I read like a handful, I know, but I need to
Sure.
refresh myself on the canon so I can get all the little fun tidbits.
You might be more familiar with it because you're Americans. Sorry about that. Do you guys know the Maximum Ride series?
I know of it. Our friend Bex has them. I've not read them.
Yeah, I was obsessed. Those were my Harry Potter when I was a kid. I was obsessed. And no one else had ever read them, but it's a very American series because James Patterson, who I don't think writes. Isn't this an RPG podcast? What are we doing?
Hey, I told you. I prefaced.
did.
I prefaced
did.
ahead of time. I was like, if we ramble, that's part of the brand.
That's
we
fine.
had an episode
That's
where
fine.
we just talked about like our fears.
Yeah,
for,
there
like,
was an
hour.
episode. We had a guest
God.
episode with Big D&D Energy, and it devolved into just us talking about our like not irrational fears for the entire episode.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we
So
were
you
like,
start off
we're like,
this was a funny thing in our last game, and then minute 50, you're like, so in
Yeah.
the end, I suppose my biggest fear is dying alone.
yeah. And so we were just like, this was a great podcast
So
for
Pickle is
DMs to.
furious at
Oh, you're good.
wires exist, and he hasn't chewed them.
Yeah,
Fair.
fair. That's completely fair, Pickle. No, we at the end, I was like doing my fucking marketing girly shit where
Yeah,
I was like,
how
this
can
is
we
a great
spend
podcast for DMs to get inspiration about fears.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
that's how we're gonna relate it back to D&D.
And then after, because like one of the stories that I told was about this like cyclone of birds that my father and I accidentally summoned outside of a Holiday Inn on a family vacation.
God, I was crying laughing.
And like bird, like I colloquially to like for that story is bird tornado, and bird tornado is one of my go-to. Just like if I need a random fucking story from my childhood that it is a crowd pleaser. So that was one of the stories that I told on the podcast. And then when we were in like a server with some of our friends and like we mentioned it, and like Ollie brought up the bird tornado story. One of the girls in the server was like, "Oh man, like I've never had anything quite like that happen like in a campaign." And I'm like, "Oh no, this wasn't something that happened in a campaign.
This was real life.
This was something that happened in my real life with my real parents at a Holiday Inn in the state of Texas."
At
like
the ye old fantasy Holiday Inn.
This was a real thing that happened. And she's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "No, I know."
And it sounds like an Eldritch horror situation.
Yeah.
So it's very
good. Be like that with my family sometimes, where I'm like, where are the punk cameras?
Yes. Do you guys want to hear my favorite Call of Cthulhu? Hello, Pickle.
Yes.
Hello. Do you guys want to hear my favorite Call of Cthulhu story?
Yes.
So I was running.
I think that'll be a great way to wrap it. Give us the good.
So this has been a very focused episode. So I was running with a group of players, and it's one of the adventures in the starter set where there's this thing in an attic. It's been magically bound there, but that seal is starting to break down, and so it is your investigators' jobs to reform this seal and secure this thing. And one of the players asked if they could have a flamethrower. Now I don't know how much you know about flamethrowers in the 1920s, but they're not like how flamethrowers work in movies. In movies, flamethrowers are just like a short gout of flame. In reality, flamethrowers are a giant spray of fuel, which then gets ignited. So one of the players asks, "Can I have a flamethrower?" I ask him for a luck roll, which is another thing you can do in Cthulhu. Luck is a resource that you can spend. He gets it, so I'm like, "Yeah, sure, yeah, fuck it. I don't like saying no. You can have a flamethrower." None of them have skill in flamethrower, so
what a sentence that is.
Yeah. So simple weapons don't need a skill in Cthulhu. They kind of come under fighting brawl. So something like a club or a bat. But then something like a sword or chainsaw is their own skill. So no one has skill in flamethrower. So one of the guys gets it, and they've boarded themselves into this house where this thing is, and this thing has like resurrected a zombified bear. And this bear is tearing this door down, but it can't cross the threshold. So one of the guy goes, "Oh, I'm going to shoot the flamethrower at the door." And I went, "You are aware the door is closed?" And he said, "Yes." And I went, okay. So he fires the flamethrower, and I describe the liquid firing out straight up the door, coating the ceiling, which then immediately ignites everything. They go running. One of the players breaks the thing out of its summoning circle just because, just to see what happened, really.
Just to spice things up.
Yeah, his character was just kind of stood around. He was like, I'm just going to break the circle. I just want to see what's going to happen.
We'll just do this. Why not
Yeah.
this?
And then the character with the flamethrower goes running out, and he stood there, and this thing is invisible to add insult to injury.
Hate it.
And he's just waiting for it, and he goes like, so you can kind of see it as it approaches you. You can see it like disrupting the grass around you. What are you going to do? And he just goes, I'm going to wait. And I go, okay. So I roll damage, and it rips his heart out.
Oh my
just
God.
immediately kills him. Cthulhu's a fun game.
I'm just imagining like the panic of all those people in the room, light on fire and shit, and that one person in the back being like, their little toe is just scraping at that.
It's exactly what he did.
Yeah,
Exactly what he did.
Don't mind me
if the house burns down.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been anything. And you can imagine kind of how it went from there. But there's a certain liberty in hopelessness, isn't there? Because things can't get 101% fucked. And if you know it's the last session you're doing, you must be like, let's just see what's going to happen.
Balls to the wall, you know?
Balls to the wall. Exactly.
Love that. Oh my God. Well, it's about that time, but this has been literally such an amazing chat. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Give us a quick little outro again and remind people where they can go find you and all the cool stuff that you got going on.
Absolutely. It's been a hot minute since I've been on a podcast. So I've been shaking off the rust. But yes, thank you both so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm always happy to get on and talk about RPGs because in the end, I think they're a wonderful way to tell a story. And we live I'm really getting deep on it right in the last minute.
Go for it.
We live we increasingly live in a society where it's harder and harder, I think, to build a sense of community. Harder and harder to find spaces where people can get together and just enjoy things for free. And I think RPGs, if nothing else, are an excuse to get the people that you care just in your home or wherever, and just to sit and chat and fuck about for a few hours and use your imagination and use your sense of play. Because if you don't use those things, they rust. And I will do anything I can to help support those because I just think they're wonderful. So I'm Luke Piowski, Arcane Keeper. I talk about horror and mystery and RPGs and just kind of anything else that grabs my attention. I have a really focused pitch, as you can tell. I'm at Arcane Keeper on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and that's it for now. But yeah, thank you both so much for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Literally anytime. And thank you so much for coming on. And thank you guys for listening to another episode with us. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Table Talk is a podcast brought to you by Mythos Media Productions, bringing you a new episode every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcast. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Table Talk RPG, or check us out at our website, mythosmediaproductions.godaddysite.com. All business inquiries can reach out to us via email at info@mythosmediaproductions.com.